Which member of the Spurs next season might regress?
You are Locked On Spurs, your daily San Antonio Spurs podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey everybody, this is Nathan Ray Clark from Criminal Minds and Modern Family, and you are listening to Locked On Spurs, hosted by Victor Wembanyama's new best friend, Jeff Garcia.
Welcome back to Locked On Spurs, right here on the Locked On NBA Network. I'm your host, Jeff Garcia, Spurs writer for Ken's 5 San Antonio. Glad to have you back. Hope everybody's having a great week. We'll get you through the rest of your work week right here on Locked On Spurs. We are part of the Locked On NBA Network, your team every single day, except for the offseason, every other day. But hey, we're still here, nevertheless, talking all things silver and black. Quick note, due to some scheduling issues between me and the guest, video cannot be done today, but we'll be back video hopefully by the end of this week. What are we talking about today? We're going to be looking at the roster and ask a question: who might regress next season? Well, everybody's saying, "Oh, who's going to make the next leap? Is it going to Vassell? Is it Malaki?" But what about the reverse? What about somebody who may take a step back? We're going to ask our guest who he has on that list, his one pick, and I'll give you mine. Also, with Malaki entering his second season, does he still deserve a pass as he develops? Right here on Locked On Spurs. But before bringing our guest, a lot of hype. You know, the Spurs season is coming up soon, and tickets, if you all seen the secondary market, brace yourself for sticker shock. But that just goes to show you how much excitement there is. But this kind of ties into what we're going to be talking about, is that with Wemby coming on board now, some players may have to take a step back, may have to change their role. That is part of developing this roster. And we're going to also see that as a true test of the other side of a pro athlete, these young Spurs, is are they willing to make sacrifices? Last year, most of them saw their games, or at least their time on the court, spike up. And then obviously, there's no marquee player, there's nothing to lose, just nothing but development. But now with the franchise player on board, possibly Wemby, hopefully he does turn out to be the player that we hope he is. Not a lot of touches going to go to him. Everything's going to revolve around him. But which player may suffer the biggest impact? Not in a negative way. I mean, it's just part of the game. You bring in a Wemby, you bring in a Tim Duncan, a LeBron James, Luka Doncic. Yeah, other players on that roster are going to see the effect. There's that other ripple effect of bringing on a big-time player. Wemby will likely do that. Maybe not initially, but as he gets better and he gets used to the game, and obviously the Spurs are going to revolve around him on both ends of the court, you might start seeing that shift. So that's exactly what we're going to be talking about right now. Let's go and bring in our guest. He is Joe Garcia, Two Shots Podcast. Joe, thanks for making time. I know you're busy at work, hence we couldn't do a video, but nevertheless, we thank you for your time.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me and asking me to be on. It's always a pleasure to talk San Antonio Spurs basketball with you. And me, I'm doing dual duty or triple duty. I'm doing my first job, my second job, and I'm also doing Locked On Spurs. So I'm a busy guy, man. But hey, anytime Jeff calls me, I drop what I'm doing to help out.
Thanks a lot, man. Yeah, in case you didn't hear, Joe is with Two Shots Podcast and part of the rebranded Acquired Taste, no longer the Acquired Taste. What's it now called, Joe?
The Alamo City Podcast Network. And the show that I'm doing Monday through Friday is called the Alamo City Sportscast.
You can find that on YouTube. I am a frequent guest. By the time you're listening to this show, I might be on right now. We'll definitely find out. But Joe, again, thank you for taking time out. Again, no video for this one. Joe, as you heard right now, he's at work and unfortunately could not make time. He couldn't have access to a camera right now since he's at work, everybody. Can't go flipping on that video camera while at your work desk. But Joe, let's dive into it. So everybody's always talking about, who's going to be the next player to take the next leap and leap this and leap that? Is it Sohan? Is it Devin Vassell? Oh, yay. But there's the other side of the coin. Which players do you think may regress, may see some numbers drop? So with that in mind, Joe, and to get you out of here as soon as possible because you got to go back to work, who is on your list? Who's your number one pick on the roster who might see him take a step back?
Actually, the person who I think is going to digress the most is Keldon Johnson. I mean, the reason that I say Keldon is that Keldon's not going to get nearly, I don't believe, as many touches, and he's not going to be called upon to do as much as he was in the prior seasons when the Spurs were really looking at him to be the man Now that the team is going to be built around Wembanyama, I think that Keldon isn't going to have to do as much as I stated, which means that it's going to free him up to have a good season, but the numbers might not project that or go ahead and suggest that. But I believe he's going to still have a solid season. He's just not going to have to do as much. So I think his numbers are going to take a hit.
And not to mention too, Joe, he may be coming off that bench. There's a
He
possibility
might be.
he might be the guy, which is going to be interesting because he's currently the highest paid Spur, and he might be the most expensive six man in the league next year. But you look at what Keldon did last year, in a career high in minutes, 32.7, career high in points per game, 22. He also had a career high in assists, 2.9. So, yeah, I could definitely see that. Again, it's no knock on him. If he does drop in points and all this stuff, it's just because that's part of the Wemby effect. It's going to affect players positively and negatively. And again, not negative. Like, we're not trying to bash Keldon like, oh, he's going to regress because he's not a good player. No, we're just saying the chances statistically of him seeing his numbers drop is going to be evident. If he comes off that bench, you're probably not gonna get a lot of time out there. Obviously, it's not how you start the game, it's how you finish the game. Maybe that's where he'll make it up. But no longer being that go-to guy as he was last year, no longer being the guy you're going to give the ball to, the touches are going to regress and they're going to impact his numbers. Joe, you look at Keldon, he's your pick. Do you think he'll have an issue with that? Do you think he'd be griping and complaining, or do you think he's just going to go with it?
The thing is that Keldon is the epitome of a San Antonio Spurs player. With that said, they're going to go ahead and swallow their pride, put away that, or kind of dispel that, and just do what's called upon them to go ahead and win. Very much like one Manu Ginobili. Now, will he be able to go ahead and be okay with that moving forward? I think that's the big question. I think he might be okay with that for this season, but come next season or the season after that, if he's still being called upon to come off the bench and he feels like he's a starter, then he might ask the Spurs to go ahead and trade him so he can go ahead and get more run on another team to go ahead and be in that starting position.
Right.
And we're just go ahead and speculating here. We don't know if that's going to in fact really happen. He's going to come off the bench. He's not going to be in that starting lineup. But we're just saying, and if that was the scenario, I think he'd be okay for maybe 1 or 2 seasons. But after that, maybe he might be looking to pull up shop somewhere else.
Yeah, look, hopefully he does it. He's a good player. I think he's a great fit on this team. He brings the energy, even during a down season. I was in that locker room, Joe, and he was, very jovial, trying to keep spirits up. I think this team needs it. Now, I don't see him griping or making a big stink in public. That's not the Spurs way. Very few have ever done that. But nevertheless, you got to think about the financial side of things too. Perhaps there are going to be contract incentives that he signed when he signed this extension that maybe he won't be able to meet now. What if he has to average? I'm making this up, 46% from the 3 line next year. I'm making that up. What if he can't meet that? Or what if one incentive is for him to make the All NBA first team or something like that? He can't do that because of the touches and different role. So those are things to keep in mind moving forward.
Well, here's the flip side of that too, Jeff. If he's not able to go ahead and make the NBA, the first All-NBA team or what have you, maybe he can make the defensive team. Because even though his offense might not be, in contention for something of that nature, I think his defense can actually get a lot better this upcoming season, and maybe he might be a candidate for a second team, all defensive, player in the making. So we'll see. I think where one thing can go ahead and drop off a little bit, I think he can make it up in a different area, and I think that could be defense.
Yeah, look, whatever Keldon is going to do, whether it's coming off the bench or starting, I think he'll still be a very key piece to this Spurs team. But if we're just looking at regression by the numbers, and there's a strong possibility that he might be the number 1 candidate to take a step back statistically, simply because of the Wemby effect. When we get back, we're going to continue our chat about which Spurs player may take a step back. Joe suggested Keldon Johnson. I'm going to give you who I think might take a step back right here on Locked On Spurs.
Autobots, roll out.
Hey, I want to talk to you about Ibotta. Look, if you're picking up burgers, hot dogs for a summer barbecue, or you're already doing it, so why not get cash back for it with Ibotta? Look, finally taking that summer vacation you've been planning, but dreading buying all those necessities before you take off. Well, it's time to stop spending your hard-earned money without getting anything in return. Enter Ibotta. Ibotta gives you cash back on hundreds of grocery items to produce, to personal care, to pantry goods, so you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you are purchasing. Either link your loyalty account or upload your receipt after you shop and get your cash back. Super easy. On average, Ibotta users earn $120 per year. That can cover the cost of an entire shopping trip. Or you can get your cash back to buy that flight you've been eyeing, that game you're dying to go to, or that fancy dinner you've been craving. Other apps give you points that don't amount to much. With Ibotta, you get real cash back, and you can cash out to your bank account, PayPal, or gift cards. Earn cash back from hundreds of online brands, retailers when you start with Ibotta. That includes the Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and more. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta out with using code LOCKED when you register. Just go to the App Store, Google Play Store, download the free Ibotta app, use code LOCKED. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store and use code LOCKED.
Autobots, roll out!
And we're back right here on Locked On Spurs with Joe Garcia. He's with Two Shots Podcast and the rebranded Alamo Sports Podcast. Did I get that right, Joe?
It's the Alamo City Podcast Network, and the show that I do Monday through Friday is called the Alamo City Sportscast, kind of keeping with the theming.
Yeah. Joe already has his debut show. It's out already. He's already done, I think, about 2 or 3 under his belt now. He does everything from NFL to Spurs to MLB, MMA. He talks about it all, even entertainment news. So you definitely check it out on YouTube. Joe will talk more about that later on. And we're also discussing which Spurs players may regress next season simply because of the Wemby effect. And you mentioned Keldon Johnson. I think that is a solid candidate. For me, I'm going to go with Doug McDermott. I think Doug McDermott, likely is going to see his numbers drop. Now, look, the reason why I say that is because, one, they brought in 3-and-D guys, Reggie Bullock, Cedi Osman. Now, who knows, maybe Cedi might not be here come the start of the regular season, but if he does continue to be on that bench, then perhaps the Spurs may go to those 2 new Spurs over McDermott. Now, last season, McDermott played 64 games, 21 minutes per game, averaged about 10.2 points per game, 2.2 rebounds, and 1.4 assists. He shot 45% from the field and 41% from the 3 line. That 41% from the 3 line may save him to get some minutes, but when you bring in a guy like Reggie Bullock, who is a 3-and-D guy, when we think McDermott, we just think of a 3 guy. Sometimes the D is not there, Joe, but defense is what Pop wants. That's what Bullock has. Defense leads to minutes. And not to say that McDermott doesn't get minutes. I think he will. I just think perhaps we may see those 20.5 minutes per game from last year drop maybe to 15, 14, simply because of the additions of Bullock and Cedi Osman. What are your thoughts, Joe? Do you think he's a candidate to see some statistical regression next year?
I think he can see some statistical regression, especially if you're going to go ahead and have Keldon kind of be the head of that second unit.
Yeah, exactly.
That means that there's not going to be enough minutes, enough touches to go around for Dougie McBuckets. Even though he's a high energy player off the bench and has a lot of veteran leadership, at the end of the day, it is what it is when it comes to minutes and touches. Well, he can still have games where he's going to go off and, have the numbers that Spurs fans are accustomed to. I think if you're going to add Keldon into that second unit, then you're going to see a little dip in Doug McDermott. And it's not a knock on him or anybody else. That's not what we're saying. These are good things, actually, if you think about them in the end, that the players don't have to do as much to make the team go and to make the team be competitive. I think we're going to see more of a balance, and that might mean a little bit of regression on the part of, Doug McDermott.
Yeah, and another guy that I had on my short list, I know the game here was to pick one player. You did Keldon, I did Doug. But I think the second guy on my list, simply because of the minutes at the position, and that was Sandro, Big Mamu. Because you have him, you have Bassie, you obviously have Wemby, and you have Zach Collins. Something's got to give, Joe. Then I think that when it says regression, he may regress to not even being on the team. Now, the Spurs did give him a deal. They did sign him. I get that, but it's not uncommon for teams to do that and then waive them. So I think, that we even think about Dominic Barlow too. I mean, he's another guy in that bigs mix. Now, I think Barlow will be in Austin, so maybe that's not an issue. But Just that alone, just between Wemby, Zach Collins, Mamu, and Charles Bassey, something's got to give. And unfortunately, I think at that position, Sandro may be the odd man out. And if there's a regression, he might regress all the way to the end of the bench, back to the G League, or maybe not in the Spurs uniform. Your thoughts, Joe?
Mamu is one of those players that you don't always have to have him play every single game. He's more of an insurance policy. And if Pop wants to go ahead and give the night off to, let's say, one of the other players that's, a prominent fixture in that rotation, even whether it be the starting five or it's going to be, in that second unit, Mamu is a really interesting piece, because again, you don't call on him every single night, but the times that you do, he's going to go out there and give you quality minutes. Now, again, we're giving scenarios here based on playing time, who's going to get it, who's not. Yeah. Unfortunately, Mamu might be the odd man looking in here, and there might not be enough minutes to go around. So he might be delegated to the Gorgie Dang role, where he's just there sitting down and just enjoying the ride. And once in a while, Pop calls your number and you go out there for a couple of minutes and you sit down again. That might be very much the scenario that we're looking at with Mamu.
Who else is on your list that possibly could see a statistical regression?
Unfortunately, it's going to be a Spurs fan favorite, and not a knock on him, but Jeremy Sohan. I mean, you're not going to see him put up the numbers from an offensive perspective as he was putting up near the end of the season last season, right? He had to be called upon to be a scorer because the Spurs just needed him out there to score some buckets so the team could remain competitive. Now with that, the insertion of one Victor Wembanyama, and I think the Spurs are going to have a good starting five. I think Jeremy might see a little regression in that part from an offensive perspective. But the good part about that is he doesn't have to be an offensive weapon. Now he can get back to doing what he's best at, and that is playing defense. So if you see a little bit of a dip in the offensive numbers, that's great. That means that he's out there playing defense. And that's why he was, in the first part, that's why the Spurs drafted him on this team. So he might see a little dip as well.
That is the Wemby effect. Look, all the touches are going to go to him offensively. Defensively, he's going to be the anchor. Any defensive schemes are definitely going to involve him. And that's going to be part of the Wemby effect for the players. Now, obviously, the opposite is true. Players are also going to thrive. He's going to command the double teams, a wide open look. So, yeah, there's that side. But we're just trying to look at we're trying to do the bad news first and then get to the good news at a different show on a Locked On Spurs. But there you have it. Those are a few candidates who think statistically might have a regression next year. Again, no knock on them simply because this team brought in a possible franchise player and it may impact them moving forward. When we get back, we're going to continue our chat about your silver and black. Ask a big question about Malaki Branham, whether or not Spurs fans should give him one more pass next season before they start demanding some dividends and seeing him really take over right here on Locked On Spurs with Joe Garcia of Two Shots Podcast and the Alamo Sports YouTube show. Joe, you've been to Mudslingers lately?
I have not been to Mudslingers lately, but I want to go because I want to try the OG OJ.
Exactly. You want to go get that OG OJ over at Mudslingers, a proud local sponsor of Locked On Spurs. They are located at 2404 Thousand Oaks Drive in the Stone Oak area. Yeah, they're open every day, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. They have the best coffee in San Antonio. They have the signature drink, which is called the Mudslinger, which is a espresso, dark chocolate, caramel. It's a really good introduction to coffee. They have dairy alternatives. They have the Red Bull infused lightning bolt series. Basically, just a lot of energy in a cup and a lot of Red Bull, and it'll get you through the day. So if you need a quick pick-me-up, if you need to get something through your day, or you want to have take it easy and get that OG OJ. Basically what that is the old school Orange Julius from back in the 70s and 80s. Well, Mudslingers recreated it, and you can find it only at Mudslingers. They have an extensive menu. It's not simply just drinks and coffee and Red Bulls and whatnot and the OG OJ. They have donuts. Have you had the mini donuts yet, Joe?
I have not, but I heard they were really good. Some of my boys have already been, and they said they're to die for.
Yeah. A lot of people love the mini donuts, and I think they're kind of like a secret treat on the menu because everybody goes for coffee, but then when they see donuts, like, whoa, what's this? And people buy them, and next thing you know, they're all, wow, shared it on social media. Like, these donuts are great.
Jeff ate the whole cup.
I ate the whole cup, man. Yeah, I couldn't stop it. I didn't want to share with anybody. But yeah, they also have the alien drink. That should give it away already. What they named it after. That's after Victor Wembanyama. It's a full can of Red Bull. Unfortunately, Joe doesn't have the strength to handle a full can of Red Bull. So sad, Joe. So sad. But if you can handle
nervous.
but if you can handle a full can of Red Bull, you want to get the alien. It's Red Bull and kiwi and apple all mixed together, and it tastes very good. A lot of people have tried it. They say it gets them through their day. Open every day, again, Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., 2404 Thousand Oaks Drive here in the San Antonio area. You can find them on Threads, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter. I mean, pick a platform. They are there at Mudslinger, SATX, even on Instagram. And you might want to be keeping an eye out for Mudslingers. They might be introducing a new drink soon. I got the scoop, Joe.
Is it going to be the money bags?
No,
Please
it's not going to be the money bags. I wouldn't even be saying this right now if it was that. I'd be embarrassed. But stay tuned for that. Only at Mudslingers. Life is too short for bland coffee. That's going to wrap it our chat with Joe Garcia of Two Shots Podcast. Follow him on Twitter at Two Shots Podcast. And Joe, I mean, technically the Spurs are still in a rebuild, right? I mean, maybe it's not a rebuild. It's, they're coming out of it already. But nevertheless, they're in it. And part of that is still player development. Look, Wemby's going to have to go through player development too. It's going to have to happen. He's going to his ups and downs and his trips and falls and getting dunked on, all that good stuff. But some players are also still in development mode, and that could be Malaki Branham. Now, he had a pretty good showing in the summer league, granted a very small sample size, but he's entering his sophomore season. Joe, big question. Should Spurs fans still kind of give him a pass because he's technically still in development, or do you think it's time to pay off Malaki? Let's see some production.
I think it's time to see some production out of the young guy. He's a shooting guard. He shoots right, and if we're looking at his stats from last season, 22-23 season, he was averaging 10.2 points a game, 1.9 assists. And from the field goal range, it wasn't bad. From the field, he was shooting 44%. From the three, he was shooting 30.2%. His free throws, he was knocking them down at a healthy clip here, 82.9%. All around, not bad. Those aren't bad numbers, but he's been here for a little bit now. So I think you want to go ahead and see that trajectory, kind of go in the up direction. You want to see a little bit more production out of him. So I think we might see that this season.
Yeah, I think I'm going to give him still a pass, but pass light in the sense I just want to see some steps forward. And look, if he gets in a shooting slump, so be it. But he's not there yet. Defensively, he's still not there yet. He shows signs of somewhat improvement in the summer league, and that's a good step. We like that too. I talked to a fellow Locked On NBA member, Josh Lloyd, and we talked about Malaki for his podcast show, and he's not buying Malaki. Like he's not sold on Malaki. He just thinks that he's too streaky. That defensively, it's not there. But we shall see. No, I think Spurs fans, in my opinion, should give Malaki a pass. But I mean, my goodness, you can see there's something special that he can score at three levels. He can get to the free throw line. He can score the 3-shot, hit the mid range. He has speed. He has a very old timey kind of old school game to him. But he definitely needs to get better. And I think the Spurs are not going to rush him. They're going to let him develop at his pace. And if he takes another half a season to get there, so be it. But let's look at some of the numbers. Now, you brought up some of the numbers right now, Joe, about Malaki.
Yeah,
one
like
thing that I definitely need to
points
see
a game is what I said.
Get better is yeah. The 3-point percentage definitely has to get better. It's 77 for 200. He took 255 attempts last year and made 77. That's good for 30%. That's got to get better. He's only attempted one free throw on average, Joe, through 66 games played on his rookie season. That's where I think he can really step up his game by getting aggressive, maybe up those attempts. So there's a lot of room for improvement, and that's why I'm willing to give him one more year for a pass. But I definitely need to see some strides. Any final thoughts about Malaki, Joe?
No, he's one of these players that I find very intriguing. If he can go ahead and they can get a little bit more production out of him. I think he can go ahead and make a strong case for him getting even more minutes, as the season unfolds. But that's all going to be dependent on him and his player development on the off season. So I just have high hopes for the kid. He's one of those players that you look and you say, look, he's not ever going to probably be a budding superstar, but he can be a very good, solid piece in the Spurs rotation, primarily in that second unit. So he's an intriguing prospect to me, and I'm looking to see what he can bring this season. I'm excited to see how he can go ahead and have those numbers go up as far as his stats go. Yeah. That's going to show that he's learned a lot.
He might be one of the first guys off the bench too next year. So I think that'll help his confidences too.
It would. That would show a lot of confidence in him.
Yeah, we know as of right now, there's still a debate who's starting. There's a chance that Keldon may come off that bench. Who knows? Could be Devin, but I mean, we shall see. But I'm pretty sure that we'll see Malaki be one of those. He may not be the sixth man, but he might be that seventh man coming off that bench.
I don't know. I heard a new player might be coming off the bench too. They might give Jeff Garcia a 2-way contract.
You know what?
A 10-day.
You know who also could be too? Maybe even a campaign. Campaign might eat into that.
Yeah. That could be very well a scenario that we're looking at.
The Spurs depth. I think we need to have a show soon, Joe, about the depth of the Spurs. I don't think anybody's really talking about that.
No.
But yeah, Joe. So Joe's being the Russian judge here, man. He wants to see results now from Malaki. I'm like, okay, Malaki, you get another year pass, and that's it. One more year, and you're good. One more year to get yourself seasoned.
Isn't that what they do though with all these young players? They always want to give them a pass. 3 years from now, let's give him a pass in his fourth and final year of the contract. No, let's give him a pass. They did the same thing with Lonnie Walker, So I'm just like, it's just something that Spurs fans get enamored with. Oh, no, pobrecito, I like this player so much. Let's not go ahead and be hard on him. Well, I mean, they're professionals. They get paid to produce and play out there on the court and get better every single year. That's the league that we live in, So I think by us wanting production out of the kid, it's not a bad thing. I think it's good for him and it's good for the team.
Absolutely. But we are done talking. We want to hear from you. What do you think about Malaki? Should we give him a pass? One more pass and that's it? Or you want production now like Joe is? Joe demanding some results, some stats from Malaki. And what do you think about players who may regress a bit statistically simply because of the Wemby effect? Joe picked Keldon. I picked McDermott. We also threw names out there like Mamu, and Joe went with Sohan. Interesting pick too. But we need to hear from you. But Joe, tell us more about the new YouTube show and Two Shots podcast.
Yeah, so I've been focused on this rebrand here, going from the Acquired Taste to now being known as the Alamo City Podcast Network. So to me, that's going to be an intriguing step forward for us as we bring in more and more shows into the network. So I'm going to be working on that and also working on the Alamo City Sportscast that's going to be featured Monday through Friday. And then on top of that, I got to find time to go ahead and do the Two Shots podcast, which we are going to go ahead and kick back up again. And I think my first guest on the show is going to be the one and only Jeff Garcia.
All right. Yeah. Can't wait to do that with Joe Garcia. He has a good show. Good times. Good. I forget that cussing is allowed on the YouTube show. I try to bite my tongue because I'm used to it because I have to do it here. But then I remember a few times where I have cussed in front of people. Like people say, don't do that again because it sounds weird coming from you. They're like, don't do it again. You sound weird when you do it. So I'm just trained that way, Joe. I'm just trained
Jeff,
that way.
I bet you anything. Like when we hang out together, Jeff's just going to be cussing up a storm.
Oh no, yeah. No. And then that kind of in a social setting, yes, I do. But for some people have reacted that way, saying like, man, it takes some getting used to hear you dropping an F-bomb here and there. I'm like, okay, I don't know why y'all think that, but all right. But he is Joe Garcia of Two Shots Podcast. Again, we want to thank him because he is making time while at work, and that's why we couldn't do a video. He's at work, everybody. The last thing you don't want him to lose his job. So nobody would know, Joe. Nobody would know.
No, I hope nobody from my job watches this. They're gonna be like, hey,
hey, what are you doing there? No, all good. Again, thank you, Joe, for hopping on, and we thank you all for making Locked On Spurs your first listen each and every day. Free and available wherever you get podcasts: Google Play, Stitcher, iTunes, YouTube, the Ken's 5 Plus app, so many other platforms. You guys are the everydayers. We'll be back, like again, Friday. Guests to be determined and topics to be determined. But if I were a betting person, I would put it on possibly Wemby. So for Joe Garcia, I am Jeff Garcia. We're going to put a lock on this episode of Locked On Spurs.